Sometimes it's nice to have a little break within your hobby. For me, that's going to be this cute little Goblin Wolf Rider. Not that I haven't painted a whole bunch of Gobbos and other greenskins over my time in the mini painting hobby, but I haven't painted one recently. But less so the Goblin and more the sheer character of this particular piece. The wolf, even by itself, was a really nice wolf model. An interesting dynamic pose landing on its front paws, a snarling face with fur billowing around, slightly cartoony, and just a really lovely wolf model. But add to that, this really fun Goblin, really well sculpted with a massive great big grin on his face. The pose matches the idea that they're definitely surfing along, being carried along by the wolf and not just sitting on it or feeling separate somehow. So I just had to shout out PrintedEncounter, who sculpted this particular model, and I'll also mention the base is a sample from Taigaminiatures and the frog is by Pellinor. Yes, that little frog, that cute little thing. I enjoyed the character of the main model here so much, I just had to add some embellishments to the base, and I thought if this wolf careening past and a little frog by the pond scared and jumping out of the way, that was just too funny an idea for me to not have. All in all, I want to point out that I was just enjoying how much fun this little Goblin is having, and I wanted to paint a fun model like this as a change from some of the things I've painted recently. So getting stuck into painting with some fairly obvious things first, the stuff on the base and the wolf's fur, you kind of can guess what colours I'm going to use. Although I did choose to highlight the wolf with orange rather than simply going from dark brown to light brown, as the sculpt has that slightly more whimsical comic book look. The paint should be slightly more fun as well. I even added just a touch of yellow to really allow for a bright highlight. But this is where things get different. You see, just about every goblin or orc I've ever painted, I start with a dark green and highlight with lighter greens and maybe some red for certain details. But recently, I've changed the way I paint human Caucasian skin to include red or purple in the underlayer, and the reason for that is skin is translucent, and so its colour is affected by the blood running underneath. So why not, for a green skin, include that same red or purple to show that the blood is running under the skin. As I'm not feeling all that inspired to tackle this in an artsy kind of way, I'll just douse the model in a brown wash and get back to highlighting. Which really is just a little more orange for the wolf. But do you remember that I said I wasn't inspired to tackle this in a kind of more artsy way? Yeah, I lied about that, because I recently watched a video from 52Miniatures where they show a particular painting process for green skin that goes from a red or purple up to a green, but without paint mixing, just simple layering. The way old 52 describes it, it's very much the process of glazing, although they never use the word glaze or glazing or anything like that, and they're not thinning their paint specifically, but I will, because for my fun little gobbo, because I haven't glazed in a while, I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to do 52's process, but with a thinner glaze made from my green. Now, this was a very silly choice because A, I haven't glazed in a while, and B, this particular green is really quite poor for glazing. It works much better when it goes on fairly thick. But I mixed in some matte medium to ensure that I could have a very translucent paint without having such a low viscosity that it pulls into the recesses like a wash. And immediately from the first brushstroke, I realised what 52 had been nattering on about. I am so used to paint mixing, it's really a cornerstone of my painting style. I particularly like two-paint mixing, a technique where you just use two paints on a particular part of the model and you mix from your shadow colour to your highlight in different percentages essentially as you go from dark to light. This glazing process, however, gives a very different feel, even if I were to use the exact same paints, because rather than having, for example, a certain lower percentage of purple in the highest highlight. In this case, there is no purple at the very top, but rather it's below the green, and so it's being diffracted by it. It took a bit of getting used to the process, not least because this particular green is kind of awkward for glazing, but it's really easy to go in and stripe or splotch a bit of purple to cover some overly green area, and then kind of bringing back in some green to glaze back in. The darker colour without any effort to glaze goes on really opaque in one go, and just immediately set about glazing back over the top. And by doing this every now and again, even if you don't need to, you end up with some natural variations, which very much is what skin is like, and gives a more kind of, not necessarily realistic, but believable effect. And so painting this model, not only was it a fun, exciting little goblin that was enjoyable to paint, but it's also a different style of painting than the one I'm used to, and there's that kind of break from tradition almost. So yeah, everyone deserves a break, including you. Go paint something different, something fun, and let me know in the comments below what you are going to paint. Also pop past the description for links to the various things that I mentioned, and nag me if I forgot to do that, because I do sometimes forget to put links in the description where they belong. But anyway, I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and thank you very much for watching.